The Power of Choice. Why Cheating is Never an Accident. By Cherry. Introduction. Every choice is a mirror. We don't just wake up lost. We wander there, one unchecked decision at a time. This book is about choices, the silent, ordinary ones that shape who we become. It's about the stories we tell ourselves to feel better, and the truths we avoid because they're too heavy to hold. This is not a book about blame. It's a book about awareness, about reclaiming the power that lives in every moment we choose. Cheating on a partner, a promise, a dream, even ourselves is not a mistake. It's a decision. And once we understand that, we can start rewriting the story. Not by judging the past, but by becoming honest enough to choose better in the present. If you're here, it means you're ready to have a conversation most people avoid. So let's begin. Together. We live in a culture that is quick to label everything as either right or wrong, black or white. But real life doesn't fit neatly into those boxes. The truth is often murkier, more uncomfortable. It sits in the grey, the in-between, the moments we'd rather not talk about. When people hear the word cheating, most minds immediately go to relationships, broken vows, secrets, betrayal. And yes, that's a part of this conversation. But cheating runs deeper than that. We cheat ourselves every time we stay silent when we should speak. We cheat our dreams every time we choose comfort over courage. We cheat our growth every time we ignore the quiet pull of our intuition, because it's easier to follow the crowd. This book is an invitation to look at all the places where we settle, lie to ourselves, or hide behind excuses, and to do so without shame. Because once we understand why we choose what we do, we can begin to choose differently. Choice is not passive. We like to believe that things just happen to us, that we were swept away by feelings, by circumstances, by things outside of our control. And while life is unpredictable and not everything is within our power, many things are, especially our responses, our internal narratives, the ways we show up when no one is watching. We make choices all day, every day. Some big, most small, but together, they create the direction of our lives. The small decision to scroll through social media instead of journaling. The hesitation to speak your truth in a conversation. The agreement to something that feels wrong in your gut. These are not accidents. They are quiet choices and they matter. The lie of the accident. Let's talk about the word accident. It's comforting, isn't it? It absolves us. We say things like, "It just happened. I didn't mean to." Or, "I wasn't thinking." And while those statements might feel true in the moment, they usually aren't the full story. Behind every so-called accident, there's often a trail of ignored inner nudges, moments when we could have paused, questioned, or chosen differently. But we didn't. Sometimes out of fear. Sometimes out of habit. Sometimes because we were never taught how to be honest with ourselves in the first place. To be clear, this isn't about guilt-tripping ourselves or dwelling in regret. It's about getting real. Because only when we take full ownership of our choices can we unlock the power to change them. Owning our agency. Here's the thing. Ownership is not about punishment. It's about liberation. When you recognize that you played a part in how things unfolded, you also realize you have the power to create something new. You're not a victim of your past. You're the author of your next chapter. We're not here to shame ourselves. We're here to understand ourselves. Think of the most painful decision you've made, or one that someone made that hurt you. Chances are, it didn't come out of nowhere. There were signs, gut feelings, opportunities to turn around. Maybe they were missed. Maybe they were ignored. But they were there. And the beautiful, heartbreaking part of all this? The same applies to healing, to growth, to transformation. There are signs, gut feelings, opportunities to choose differently. Every single day. Life is a series of choices. You chose to pick up this book. You're choosing to read these words. That means something. That tells me you care about your choices. You want to do better, be better, or maybe just feel more aligned with yourself. That's courageous. Because being honest about where we've cheated ourselves, others, life isn't easy. But it's necessary. This book isn't here to hand you rules or formulas. It's here to hold a mirror, to ask honest questions, to help you see patterns and decide what you want to do with them. Each chapter is built around a simple idea. You always have a choice, even when it doesn't feel like it, especially then. We'll explore how cheating shows up in our lives in ways that go far beyond infidelity. We'll talk about the internal negotiations we make with ourselves, the excuses we create, and the ways we sometimes abandon our own integrity without realizing it. And we'll also talk about how to come back home to ourselves, how to rebuild, rechoose, and realign. Why this book now? Because we live in a world that's addicted to shortcuts, silence, and surface-level living. We're taught to get what we want, even if it costs us our soul. We're praised for winning, not for being honest. We're encouraged to keep going, not to stop and reflect. But if we want real joy, real peace, and real connection, we have to go deeper. We have to question what we've accepted as normal. We have to take responsibility for our lives, not as a burden, but as a gift. And that starts with one simple but powerful idea. Cheating is never an accident. You are not alone. You are not the only one who has made a painful decision. You are not the only one who has hurt someone, lied, stayed silent, or run away. You are human. That's not an excuse. It's a reminder that you're not broken, you're becoming. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about looking at your life and asking, does this reflect who I truly am? And if the answer is no, having the courage to change it. You'll find stories in these pages, my own, and those of others, meant to make you feel seen, not judged. You'll find questions, not answers, prompts, not prescriptions, because I don't have your answers, but I believe you do. Deep down, underneath the noise, the shame, and the stories. Let's begin. So let's walk this path together. Let's ask better questions. Let's get uncomfortable, then get clear. Let's stop calling things accidents when they're actually opportunities to grow. Let's choose. On purpose. With intention. With honesty. You are not here by mistake. You are exactly where you need to be to start again. Welcome. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The myth of the accident. Mistakes wear the mask of accidents, but look closely, there's always a trail. We love to believe in the randomness of events, that things just happen, that we were swept up, that emotions took over and we lost control. But if we trace our steps, we often find a breadcrumb trail of ignored signals, brushed aside discomfort, and quiet decisions that led us right to the moment we now wish we could undo. We call it an accident, but it wasn't. Not really. Cheating is rarely sudden. It starts quietly in thoughts, in habits, in micro-decisions, in justifications. And while the final moment may feel like it came out of nowhere, the truth is, it came from somewhere. From us. The slow drift. I remember a friend, we'll call her Mia, who told me about how she accidentally found herself in an affair. Her words. I didn't mean to. We were just talking. I didn't even think I liked him that way. But as she opened up, the story unfolded differently. She had been feeling distant from her partner. The emotional intimacy that once lived in their conversations had gone quiet. She tried bringing it up, but he brushed her off, said he was tired, stressed, distracted. So she stopped asking. Then she met someone through work, someone who listened, who laughed at her jokes, who noticed her. And little by little, those small moments of connection became the thing she looked forward to. Still, she didn't think she was doing anything wrong. It was just friendship, she told herself. Just lunch. Just a conversation. Just a text. Until it wasn't. When she finally crossed the line, she said, "It felt like it just happened." But it didn't just happen. It was built slowly, deliberately on a foundation of ignored boundaries, unmet needs, and unspoken pain. The myth we tell ourselves, saying, "It was an accident," is not just a way to soften the blow to others. It's often a way to avoid telling ourselves the truth. We don't want to admit we made a choice. That we looked discomfort in the eye and turned away. That we chose the easy path over the honest one. That we let fear or loneliness guide us. That there is power in truth, in naming what is. Because when we can say, "I chose this," we can also say, "I can choose differently." Accidents don't repeatedly happen. If something keeps happening, cheating, lying, ghosting, self-sabotaging, it's not an accident. It's a pattern. And patterns reveal our unmet needs, our unhealed wounds, and the parts of us that are still afraid. This is not a call to self-judgment. It's a call to self-inquiry. Ask yourself, when did I feel the first flicker of discomfort? What did I do with it? What conversations did I avoid? What truths did I push down? You might find that what you dismissed as not a big deal was actually a moment of choice. One of many that led to the moment that now feels like a mistake. The power of small choices. The beautiful thing about this realization is that it works both ways. Just as we drift into misalignment through small choices, we can return to ourselves the same way. Choosing to pause before responding. Choosing to journal instead of numb out. Choosing to speak up when something feels off. Every moment is an invitation. Takeaways: nothing just happens. We are always participating. Behind every accident is a series of choices, some loud, some whisper quiet. The earlier we acknowledge our discomfort, the less damage we cause. Honesty starts long before the betrayal. It starts in the small moments. Choosing differently begins by owning where we are. Reflection. What have I dismissed as not a big deal that was actually a choice? Where in my life am I telling myself things are just happening to me? What patterns do I keep calling accidents? Am I ready to name them for what they are? You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be conscious, to live awake. And that means letting go of the myth of the accident. Because when we stop pretending we're powerless, we start living on purpose. Let's keep going. Chapter 2. The seed of self-deception. Before we lie to others, we lie to ourselves. We often think of cheating as the moment the line is crossed, the secret is kept, the damage is done. But cheating doesn't start there. It starts in the mind. In the quiet justifications, the harmless fantasies. The inner negotiations we whisper to ourselves late at night to make something wrong feel right. It's not that we wake up and decide to betray someone. It's that we slowly loosen the boundaries we promised to keep, one rationalization at a time. The stories we tell ourselves. Every action begins as a thought. And the most dangerous thoughts are the ones we don't question. I deserve this. They won't care. It's not that serious. They're not meeting my needs anyway. I just need to feel alive again. These aren't just passing ideas. They're the mental scaffolding we build to support a crumbling truth. We use them to protect ourselves from guilt, from confrontation, from the ache of unmet needs. But all they really do is delay the pain. Because lies, no matter how softly spoken, eventually collapse under their own weight. Personal story. The gentle lie. Years ago, I was in a relationship that felt safe, but not honest. We were kind to each other, supportive. We made sense on paper, but somewhere along the way, I stopped telling the full truth. Not big lies. Just omissions. I didn't say how lonely I felt. I didn't bring up how we avoided difficult conversations. I didn't talk about the small ways I felt unseen. I told myself it wasn't worth hurting him. That we were fine. That I was just going through a phase. I convinced myself it would get better. But pretending didn't fix anything. It only widened the gap between who I was and who I was pretending to be. And by the time I finally admitted the truth, that we were more like roommates than partners, it was too late. The silence had already done its damage. And he was hurt. Deeply. Not just because I ended things, but because he realized I had left the relationship emotionally long before I left it physically. What I thought was protection was actually deception. And the person I deceived the most was myself. The role of self-deception. Self-deception is a survival tool. It helps us avoid pain. Helps us feel safe. It allows us to delay hard conversations, protect our image, and shield ourselves from the fear of being wrong. But that protection comes at a cost. When we lie to ourselves, we lose touch with our values. We betray our own intuition. And that disconnect is where cheating of any kind takes root. Whether it's cheating on a partner, cheating on our purpose, or cheating ourselves out of joy, it always begins the same way, with a lie we told ourselves to avoid a truth we weren't ready to face. Justifications are red flags. We like to believe that our reasons are reasonable, that our context matters more than our character. But when we start justifying behavior that once felt out of bounds, that's not self-awareness. That's self-abandonment. Pay attention to the stories you're telling yourself, especially the ones that sound suspiciously like excuses. Ask, am I being honest with myself? If someone I loved told me this story, would I believe it? What am I trying not to feel? Because cheating doesn't begin with desire. It begins with denial. The cost of denial. The lies we tell ourselves today become the regrets we carry tomorrow. And the longer we lie, the harder it is to find our way back to the truth. Pay attention to the stories you're telling yourself, especially the ones that sound suspiciously like excuses. Ask, am I being honest with myself? If someone I loved told me this story, would I believe it? What am I trying not to feel? Because cheating doesn't begin with desire. It begins with denial. The cost of denial. The lies we tell ourselves today become the regrets we carry tomorrow. And the longer we lie, the harder it is to find our way back to the truth. We begin to feel unrecognizable even to ourselves. We feel out of alignment, numb, disconnected, and we wonder why nothing feels real anymore. But reality never left. We just stopped facing it. The good news? It's never too late to return. Rebuilding inner honesty. So how do we stop lying to ourselves? We get quiet. We listen. We slow down enough to hear what our body is saying, what our heart is whispering, what our gut already knows. We write. We reflect. We ask hard questions and sit with uncomfortable answers. We stop asking, what can I get away with? And start asking, what feels right to my soul? We don't need to be perfect. We just need to be honest. And when we begin to practice honesty with ourselves, we naturally start showing up differently in our relationships, our work, our lives. We build trust from the inside out. Takeaways. Self-deception is the first step toward betrayal. The stories we tell ourselves shape the actions we justify. Justifications are warning signs, not permissions. Honesty starts with facing the quiet truths we want to avoid. Integrity is not about perfection. It's about alignment. Reflection. What story am I telling myself to make a wrong feel right? Where am I using justification instead of truth? What am I afraid will happen if I'm completely honest with myself? What part of me have I been ignoring? What would it feel like to live in full alignment? Cheating doesn't begin with the action. It begins with the silence, the skipped conversations, the excuses, the soft lies that snowball. But so does healing. It begins with one honest moment, one truth spoken, one choice to listen instead of ignore. Let this be that moment. Chapter 3. Pain as a compass. Pain is not the enemy. It's a messenger asking for change. We are taught to run from pain, to bury it, to distract ourselves until it quiets down or disappears. But pain doesn't go away because we ignore it. It just finds another way to speak through our behavior, our choices, our disconnection. Many betrayals don't come from malice. They come from pain left untreated, loneliness ignored, rejection unspoken, fear unacknowledged. And instead of facing the ache, we reach for someone that promises relief. Not because we're bad, but because we're hurting. Pain as a messenger. Pain is not weakness. It is not failure. It is feedback. It tells us where something is misaligned, where something inside us is asking for attention. But we've grown up in a world that teaches us to dismiss pain. Get over it. Don't be dramatic. You're fine. So instead of listening to pain, we mute it. We scroll, we drink, we flirt, we chase validation, we pretend we're okay. And when that doesn't work, we reach further sometimes into things that compromise who we are. Personal story. The hollow distraction. After the death of someone I deeply loved, I felt like a part of me went silent. I didn't cry the way I thought I would. I didn't scream or collapse. I just drifted. On the outside, I was composed. I showed up. I smiled when I had to. But inside, I was numb. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it hums just beneath the surface, dull and relentless. And in that numbness, I started craving distraction. I found myself seeking attention in subtle ways, posting more on social media, entertaining connections I wasn't truly interested in. Not to find love, but to feel something. I told myself I was just keeping busy, but the truth was, I didn't want to sit with the pain. It felt too big, too dark, too permanent. Eventually, I realized I wasn't escaping grief. I was deepening it. Because every time I avoided it, I added another layer of disconnection. From others, from myself. It wasn't until I let myself feel fully to cry, to break, to say I was not okay that I began to heal. Pain didn't break me. Avoiding it almost did. The consequences of numbing. When we numb pain, we also numb our capacity for joy. We create emotional fog. We act out in ways that don't reflect our values. We start cheating ourselves out of real healing. This is often where betrayal begins. Not with a wild impulse, but with a quiet ache. An internal void. And instead of facing it with courage, we fill it with noise. Sometimes that noise is another person. Sometimes it's a habit. Sometimes it's the belief that we need to move on before we've even grieved. But pain is patient. It will wait. It will find you again. And every time you avoid it, it grows. Listening to discomfort. Pain shows up as discomfort long before it shows up as destruction. The tension in your chest. The dread you feel on Sunday nights. The snap in your voice when you're asked how you are. These are not signs of weakness. They are invitations. To rest. To grieve. To speak. To ask for help. To stop pretending. But we can't accept the invitation if we're too busy running. What if pain is the way forward? What if, instead of asking, how do I stop feeling this? We asked, what is this trying to teach me? Pain is often a signal that something needs to change. a boundary that's been crossed, a need that's gone unmet, a truth that's being ignored. When we meet pain with curiosity instead of fear, it loses its grip. It becomes a teacher, not a tormentor. The difference between comfort and healing. Comfort is temporary relief. Healing is lasting change. Comfort feels good in the moment, the text you shouldn't have sent, the drink you didn't need, the lie you told to avoid conflict. But it leaves residue. Healing is hard. It's facing what hurts. It's having the hard conversation. It's being alone when you'd rather be distracted. But it leads to peace. Every time we choose healing over comfort, we reclaim a piece of our power. Pain doesn't mean you're broken. There is nothing wrong with you because you feel deeply, because you're struggling, because you don't have all the answers. Pain is not a flaw. It's part of being human. It's also a sign that you care, that something matters, that you are awake to your life. Don't shame yourself for feeling. Don't rush to fix it. Let yourself learn from it. Takeaways. Pain is a signal, not a problem. Most betrayals begin with unacknowledged emotional wounds. Numbing pain creates more pain in the long run. Healing starts when we stop running and start listening. Choosing discomfort now can lead to peace later. Reflection. What am I avoiding by reaching for temporary comfort? Where in my life am I numbing instead of healing? What pain have I been afraid to acknowledge? What would it look like to face it gently? How can I allow pain to guide me instead of define me? Pain will find a way to speak. You can either meet it in the silence or let it shout through your actions. This chapter isn't about avoiding pain. It's about letting it become your compass. So the next time you feel the ache, don't ask how to get rid of it. Ask where it's pointing you. Let it guide you home. Chapter 4. The lie of the shortcut. What's easy now can cost everything later. We live in a world that worships the shortcut. Fast results. Instant gratification. Quick wins. But what no one tells you is that every shortcut comes with a hidden cost. It might not show up right away, but it always arrives in the form of regret, emptiness, or broken integrity. Cheating isn't limited to romantic relationships. We cheat in life when we cut corners, when we lie to get ahead, when we pretend to be something we're not. We cheat when we want the reward without the process. But nothing real comes from skipping steps. What we bypass now, we pay for later. The seduction of the shortcut. There's something intoxicating about doing less and still winning. It makes us feel clever, strategic, ahead of the game. But what we often don't realize is that shortcuts disconnect us from the very things that make the journey meaningful. Effort, growth, resilience, self-respect. When we take the easy route, we bypass the transformation that only happens through showing up, through discipline, through commitment. Cheating in any form is the refusal to become who the process is shaping us into. Personal story. Recognition without roots. I remember a time when I was determined to reach a professional milestone. I wanted the promotion, the recognition, the title. But I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to do the quiet, consistent work. So I found ways to fast-track my visibility. I polished the surface. I curated the image. I said the right things to the right people. And it worked. I got what I wanted. People celebrated me. They saw me as accomplished. But when I got home and looked in the mirror, it felt hollow. Because deep down, I knew the foundation was weak. I hadn't earned it in the way that builds pride. I had achieved something externally, but internally I felt like a fraud. It wasn't that I was unqualified. It was that I hadn't let the process refine me. I hadn't become the kind of person who could hold that level of success with integrity. It took years of undoing to rebuild from the inside out, to stop performing and start becoming. Why we choose ease over growth. Growth is uncomfortable. It takes time. It asks us to be vulnerable, to fail, to try again. And most of us would rather avoid that. So we reach for the shortcut, a lie that smooths things over, a distraction instead of a conversation, a one-night stand instead of addressing intimacy issues, a shortcut to status instead of building substance. But every time we avoid the challenge, we miss the chance to grow. And what we don't grow through, we eventually fall under. Integrity. The long road that leads home. Integrity is slow. It asks you to choose what's right over what's easy, to tell the truth when it's inconvenient, to show up when no one is watching. It doesn't give you quick applause, but it gives you peace. It builds a quiet confidence that isn't shaken by external noise. The longer I live, the more I realize peace is more valuable than praise. And shortcuts always come at the cost of peace. Shortcuts and self-betrayal. Every time we choose the easy way at the expense of our values, we betray ourselves. We chip away at our self-trust. We send the message, you don't need to be whole to win. You just need to be clever. But cleverness fades. What lasts is character. If we want to build lives that we can live with, not just perform for others, we need to stop cheating the process. The slow burn of real success. The truth is, nothing truly meaningful is rushed. Deep love takes time. Real healing takes time. Sustainable success takes time. Becoming who you're proud of takes time. Every shortcut is an attempt to get the reward without becoming the person who deserves it. But when we allow the process to shape us, we earn more than a title or a result. We earn trust. We earn integrity. We earn a life we don't have to run from. Redefining progress. We need to stop measuring progress by how fast we move, and start measuring it by how true we remain to ourselves. Did I choose honesty over ease? Did I honor my word even when it cost me? Did I stay rooted in who I want to be, even when no one noticed? That's real growth. That's progress. The courage to stay the course. Staying the course requires patience. And patience is not passive. It's a radical form of courage. It's looking at a temptation and saying, you might feel good now, but you will cost me more than I can afford. It's believing that what you're building with integrity, with effort, with truth is worth the wait. Takeaways. Shortcuts offer quick wins but long-term loss. Every time we avoid the process, we rob ourselves of transformation. Integrity may be inconvenient, but it builds peace. There are no shortcuts to things that matter. Real growth is found in who we become through the hard parts. Reflection. Where am I choosing ease over growth? What shortcuts am I tempted to take right now? And why? In what ways have I cheated myself by skipping steps? How can I recommit to the process, even when it's slow? What does success look like when it includes peace of mind? We all crave the shortcut sometimes. We all want relief, reward, and results without the discomfort. But discomfort is where we find our strength. The hard road is where we meet our courage. So the next time you're tempted to take the easy way out, ask yourself, is this shortcut costing me more than I'm willing to pay? Then choose the road that shapes you. The one that takes longer. The one that leads home. Chapter 5. Resilience over ruin. Falling isn't failure. Staying there is. There comes a moment in everyone's life where a decision leads to ruin, not necessarily of everything external, but of the story we once believed about ourselves. It could be a betrayal, a lie, a moment of weakness. And in the aftermath, the echo of that moment can feel deafening. Who am I now? Can I come back from this? This chapter is for anyone who has made a choice they regret. For anyone who has faced themselves in the mirror and didn't recognize who was staring back. For anyone who feels like their mistake defines them, it doesn't. You are not your worst moment. You are what you do next. The fall isn't the end. We have a toxic relationship with failure. We think it means we're unworthy, unlovable, broken. But falling is part of being human. No one gets it right all the time. The problem isn't the fall, it's the belief that we have to stay down. Cheating, lying, betraying someone, these are choices we make from places of pain, confusion, immaturity, or fear. They are never justifiable, but they can be explained. And once we understand what led us there, we can begin to climb out. It's not about excusing the harm. It's about refusing to let it become our identity. Personal story. A fall and a rise. Years ago, I made a decision that cost me a relationship I deeply valued. I betrayed someone who trusted me. There were no dramatic excuses, just quiet, compounding selfishness moments where I chose comfort over honesty, avoidance over courage. When the truth came out, it was devastating. I watched someone I cared about walk away, and I couldn't blame them. I had broken the bridge between us plank by plank. The months that followed were some of the darkest of my life, but they were also the most transformative. I had to face parts of myself I'd ignored. I had to learn how to sit with shame without letting it consume me. I had to rebuild not for someone else's forgiveness, but for my own sense of integrity. That season birthed the deepest growth I've ever known. I found a therapist. I journaled relentlessly. I studied myself the way you study something you're trying to understand, not fix. I let the pain become a mirror instead of a mask. And over time, I changed. Not overnight. Not with one apology. But with consistent, honest, sometimes painful choices to become someone I could trust again. The path of redemption. Redemption is not earned through performance. It's built through humility. It begins when we stop pretending we did nothing wrong. It continues when we take responsibility without defensiveness. It grows when we commit to change, not for applause, but because we no longer want to live in the shadow of who we used to be. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy of redemption. You just need to be honest. Mistakes are not identities. One of the most dangerous things we can do is confuse what we did with who we are. You may have lied, but you are not a liar. You may have cheated, but you are not beyond love. You may have betrayed someone, but you are not unredeemable. Language matters. The way we talk to ourselves in the aftermath of pain sets the tone for our healing. If you keep calling yourself a monster, you will begin to act like one. If you start speaking to yourself as someone in the process of transformation, you'll begin to heal. Growth requires grief. To grow, we must first grieve. Grieve who we were. Grieve the damage done. Grieve the loss of innocence, of idealism, of relationships. Grief is not punishment. It's part of making peace. Sometimes we skip grief because we want to move on. But unprocessed pain festers. It leaks into our next relationships, our future dreams, our sense of worth. To fully rise, we must first kneel. The work of rebuilding. Rebuilding your life after a painful choice requires intention. Here's what it often looks like. Radical honesty. Telling yourself the full truth without flinching. Accountability. Making amends where possible, without expecting anything in return. Consistent change. Aligning your actions with your new values daily. Patience. Healing doesn't have a finish line. You'll have good days and relapses. Keep going. Support. You don't have to do it alone. Find safe people to walk with you. Why this chapter matters. We need to normalize recovery. We need to talk more about the climb than the fall. Everyone messes up. Everyone makes choices they wish they could undo. But the power lies in what we do after. Do we hide, or do we heal? This isn't about earning your way back to someone. It's about returning to yourself. Because when we reclaim who we are beneath the pain, we stop living in reaction to our past and start creating a future we're proud of. Takeaways. Mistakes are inevitable. Staying stuck is optional. Redemption is real and available for those who do the work. You are not your worst moment. Healing begins with truth, not perfection. Growth requires grief and honesty. Reflection. What part of my story needs rewriting, not erasing? Where have I confused my choices with my identity? What would it look like to forgive myself without forgetting the lesson? Who do I want to become now that I know better? What steps can I take today to align with that version of myself? We all fall. That part is universal. But some of us get up. And those who do, who rise with scars instead of shame, with lessons instead of labels, become a light for others. Let your rise be your redemption. Not because you deserve an easy path, but because you deserve another chance at becoming someone you can respect. And respect is built one honest choice at a time. Chapter 6. The Power of Stillness. The truth doesn't shout. It whispers in stillness. We live in a world that glorifies movement. Hustle is a badge of honor. Noise fills every corner of our days. Notifications, obligations, distractions, they pile up until we forget how to be still. But in that stillness, something powerful happens. We hear ourselves. So many poor decisions are born from noise. We move too fast to question, react too quickly to feel, speak too soon to reflect. But the truth, real, soul-altering truth, never yells. It whispers, and if we don't slow down, we miss it. This chapter is about the discipline and power of stillness. It's about how slowing down doesn't mean giving up. It means getting clear. Silence is not emptiness. Stillness is often misunderstood as doing nothing. But there's a difference between being still and being stagnant. True stillness is intentional. It's not avoidance. It's presence. When we allow silence into our lives, it becomes a container for clarity. We start noticing patterns in our thoughts, our behaviors, our justifications. We begin to see where we've been dishonest with ourselves, where we've been rushing past discomfort instead of confronting it. This awareness doesn't always come with comfort, but it always comes with truth. Personal story. The retreat that changed everything. A few years ago, life got loud. I was in a season of burnout, trying to be everything for everyone. I was spiraling into poor habits, distracted decisions, and emotional numbness. I knew something needed to change, but I couldn't hear what. I was too caught up in the cycle of go. So I left. Not forever, just long enough to find myself again. I signed up for a week-long silent retreat. No phone, no social media, no conversations. Just me, my journal, a small room, and a lot of quiet. The first day was excruciating. I kept reaching for my phone that wasn't there. I kept thinking of emails, deadlines, regrets. My mind screamed. But by the third day, something shifted. The noise in my head began to soften. I noticed the way the sun hit the floor in the morning. I felt emotions I hadn't let myself feel in years. I cried without knowing why. I forgave myself without asking for permission. In that stillness, truths I had been avoiding for years came forward. Not in judgment, but in invitation. I realized how much I'd been running. How much I had been using busyness as a shield against pain. Stillness didn't break me. It introduced me to myself. Why we avoid stillness? Stillness can be terrifying. It strips away our distractions and confronts us with reality. That's why many of us avoid it. Because in silence, the excuses fade and the truth shows up. We're scared of feeling what we've buried. We're addicted to productivity because we believe our worth is tied to output. We don't know who we are without the noise. But until we sit in stillness, we make decisions from reaction, not reflection. We numb instead of notice. We choose what's easy over what's aligned. Presence is prevention. So many of life's biggest mistakes could be prevented if we just paused. If we asked, why am I doing this? What am I feeling? What am I avoiding? Stillness doesn't just give us clarity. It gives us time. Time to make decisions we won't regret. Time to reconnect with our values. Time to listen to our intuition before we override it with impulse. The people who live with the deepest peace aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who pause long enough to notice when they're drifting. Practicing stillness. Stillness is a practice. And like any practice, it takes intention. Here are some simple ways to begin. Morning silence. Spend the first 10 minutes of your day without a phone or noise. Just breathe. Journaling. Let your thoughts land somewhere. Writing clarifies what thinking can distort. Nature walks. Move slowly. Listen to the wind. Feel the ground. Digital detox. Set boundaries with tech. Silence isn't possible if we're always plugged in. Meditation. Even 5 minutes can shift your awareness. Start small. The goal is not to be still all the time. The goal is to become familiar with yourself again. What stillness reveals. When we become still, we begin to notice patterns we've ignored, identify emotions we've suppressed, hear our intuition more clearly, feel connected to something deeper than fear or ego. Stillness doesn't give you all the answers, but it creates the space where answers can find you. Takeaways. Clarity comes in quiet moments, not chaos. Stillness isn't a waste of time, it's where time becomes meaningful. The more present you are, the fewer regrets you create. Truth often arrives when distraction departs. Stillness isn't about escape. It's about coming home to yourself. Reflection. When do I feel most connected to what's true for me? What noise am I using to avoid discomfort? What would happen if I gave myself 5 minutes of silence today? When was the last time I truly paused before making a decision? What truth is trying to whisper to me right now? In a world that rewards speed, stillness becomes a superpower, and you don't have to go to a mountaintop or retreat into a monastery to find it. You just have to be willing to pause, to breathe, to listen, because the answers you're looking for might not come from the outside. They might already be inside you, waiting to be heard. In the silence, you don't just find clarity, you find yourself. Chapter 7. Choosing again and again. Integrity isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. We often think of integrity as a milestone, something we arrive at once we've healed, learned, or grown enough. But the truth is, integrity is not a destination. It's not a single moment of bravery or a one-time vow. It's a rhythm, a quiet daily practice of returning to what matters most. We all slip. We all break promises, sometimes to others, often to ourselves. But what defines us is not the fall. It's the choice to stand back up, realign, and choose again. This chapter is about the discipline of consistency, the power of small decisions, and how our character is shaped less by our big gestures and more by what we do when no one is watching. Integrity is built in the ordinary. We tend to over-romanticize integrity as something dramatic, telling the truth in a courtroom, walking away from a toxic relationship, quitting a job that no longer aligns. But those moments, while powerful, are rare. The real work happens in the quiet. It's choosing not to text the ex you know isn't good for you. It's saying no to the small compromise that would earn quick validation. It's pausing before you speak, before you judge, before you justify. The practice of integrity begins in the micro decisions, and those decisions accumulate. They become who you are. Personal story. From self-doubt to self-trust. There was a time when I didn't trust myself. I would second-guess everything what I said, what I felt, even what I wanted. I had let so many small things slide that I began to wonder if I even knew who I was anymore. I remember a specific season in my life when I was trying to rebuild after a personal betrayal one I had caused. I had made promises, broken them, and then tried to make amends. But even after apologies, something was missing. I didn't believe myself, because I had trained myself not to. So I started small. Every day I gave myself one task. It wasn't about doing something grand. It was about following through. If I said I'd go for a walk, I went. If I said I'd journal for 5 minutes, I did. These weren't about productivity. They were about reclaiming my own trust. And with each small, completed act, I felt a little more whole. A little more rooted. A little more like someone I could count on. Why we drift? We don't lose our way in one massive leap. We drift in increments. One white lie. One ignored boundary. One rationalized behavior. It doesn't feel like a betrayal. It feels like just this once. Until those onces become habits. Until we wake up and don't recognize ourselves. But the same way we drift, we can return. One act of alignment at a time. Integrity versus perfection. Let's be clear. Integrity does not mean perfection. It's not about never making a mistake. It's about how quickly we return when we do. Integrity means owning your missteps, making amends without excuses, recommitting to your values even after you've strayed. Every moment offers a choice. Every choice is a chance to begin again. The power of the present moment. When we talk about choosing again, we're really talking about presence. Because you can't make aligned choices from yesterday's guilt or tomorrow's fear. You make them here, now. And the most life-changing decisions are rarely loud. They're often quiet promises we whisper to ourselves. I won't betray myself today. I'll be honest in this moment. I'll forgive myself for what I didn't know then, and choose better now. Habits that anchor integrity. Building integrity is about building rhythm. Here are some practices that help. Daily check-ins. Ask, did I live aligned today? If not, where did I drift? Value journaling. Write down your top 5 values and reflect on them weekly. Micro promises. Set one small intention each morning and follow through. Accountability partners. Share your goals with someone who supports your growth. Self-forgiveness rituals. When you fall short, name it, learn from it, and release it. The compound effect of choices. Over time, your small choices become your legacy. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. One aligned action leads to another. One honest moment leads to deeper trust. One courageous decision leads to a life you're proud of. You don't change your life overnight. You change your direction. And every time you choose again, you realign with the person you're becoming. Takeaways. Integrity isn't a finish line, it's a practice. Small decisions shape who you become. Slips are part of the process. What matters is how you respond. You can always choose again, no matter how far you've strayed. Trust in yourself is rebuilt one promise at a time. Reflection. What small choice can I make today that aligns with who I want to be? Where have I drifted from my values? What would it look like to realign in this moment? What micro promise can I keep to myself today? How do I respond when I fall short? And what does that say about my growth? The journey to integrity isn't paved with perfection. It's built on the courage to return, again and again. And in that return, you don't just redeem your choices. You reclaim yourself. Epilogue. The unseen audience. You are always watching you. And you know the truth. There's a strange silence that follows every decision, especially the ones we're not proud of. It's the silence after the message is sent, after the lie is told, after the shortcut is taken. No one might see it. No one might know. But you do. We all live with an unseen audience. Ourselves. Long after the moment passes, we carry its weight. And while we might rewrite the story for others, we can't unknow what we know in our hearts. Every choice we make etches itself into the mirror we carry inside. That reflection doesn't fade, it informs how we feel about ourselves when we're alone. This book was never about condemnation. It was always about coming home. About peeling back the layers of denial, self-justification, and distraction to return to a place of integrity. Not perfection, but wholeness. A life that feels aligned, because it is. The small choices are the loudest. Most of our character isn't shaped by grand, heroic acts. It's shaped in the in-between. The moments when no one is watching, when no praise is guaranteed, when no applause is given. That's when we learn who we really are. That's when we build or break trust with ourselves. Self-respect is born in quiet moments. The choice to walk away when no one would have known. The decision to stay present when it would be easier to escape. The courage to say, "This isn't who I want to be," and act accordingly. Every choice is a vote. Not just for the life you want, but for the person you're becoming. The cost of dishonesty. We often think the worst consequence of a lie is getting caught. But that's not true. The real cost is inner disconnection. When we lie to others or to ourselves, we build a wall between who we are and who we're pretending to be. Over time, the distance grows. And eventually, we don't just feel lost, we become strangers to ourselves. Living with integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. Real with what we feel. Real with what we want. Real with what we've done. Because only in that honesty can healing begin. A chance to begin again. One of the greatest gifts we've been given is the ability to start over. To choose again. To rewrite the next page. Shame tells us we're disqualified. That our past defines us. But choice says otherwise. Choice says, "You are not what you did. You are what you do next." In every moment, we are offered a fork in the road. To keep numbing or to feel. To keep lying or to tell the truth. To keep hiding or to come forward. You don't need a perfect track record to change your life. You just need the courage to listen to yourself and to honor what you hear. Living with yourself. The end of the day comes. The world quiets down. The show is over. And there you are with your thoughts, your memories, your reflection. Can you look yourself in the eye? That's the true measure of success. That's the real reward. Not external validation, but internal peace. So ask yourself, with love and curiosity, am I living in a way that makes me proud? Where am I still pretending? What truth do I already know, but haven't acted on? What would it mean to live as if I were watching myself? Takeaways. We are the first witnesses to our choices, and the ones most affected by them. Honesty isn't a performance. It's a promise to ourselves. The most meaningful form of success is self-respect. Redemption is not found in perfection, but in willingness. Integrity is a daily practice, not a fixed state. Reflection. What version of myself am I becoming through my daily choices? What would it mean to be fully honest with myself and with others? What choice today could restore my trust in me? This is your story. No one else gets to write it. And no matter where you've been or what you've done, you still hold the pen. Choose well. Choose honestly. Choose again.